gas down here at the bottom, because this is the lowest point of the tank. You can actually get most everything to come out there. Grab your pliers, undo the connector, grab your flathead, work it around. And as you can see, my hose is so old that it's just broken as I'm trying to pull it off. Always dump the gasoline into an approved container for storage. Before you remove the petcock valve, I actually recommend disassembling as much of it as you can in place. This will be much easier now when it's being held than later. Be very careful, as I don't know if you saw it or not, but there is a tiny ball bearing that actually rests with a little spring inside of it. System, there is a small metal ring, and you can see that it's purposefully not flat. There is a very wavy shape to it. From here, you can gently pull straight out on the petcock lever, set it aside for cleaning, and then on the inside you have some washers. Now the easiest way to get these washers out is to use a dental tool. And then there is a rubber plate that seals against the main body of the petcock. Now our petcock valve is completely disassembled, so with a number 3 Phillips, we can remove it from the tank for cleaning. The last item we're going to want to remove from the tank is going to be our on tube. So whenever you actually turn the tank to just on and not reserve, this is the one that it's coming from. This down here that we removed a little bit ago, that is the reserve. To remove this, it's going to be a 17 mil. You can see at the base there is an O-ring. There is also an O-ring on the reserve tube. If you buy new filters, then make sure that you buy the O-rings with them, as these are almost always shot. Now the rust remover says very specifically to make sure that your tank or the item in question is nice and cleaned out. And I know it's very weird to put water inside a gas tank, but that is the proper way to do it. You're trying to make sure that all of the stuff that's in here that's loose gets washed out. So we just feed in our hose, have the water hose turned on, and underneath you'll see I've got a catch bucket. Now one of the nice things about having this coiled hose is I can actually turn it and shoot it up on the surface of the tank, which allows me to get the stuff off the top. And we can see why they tell us to wash it out a little bit, because there's a lot of rust particles floating in this water. You can go to the store and you can buy some plugs to go in your 2 tank nipples, but what I'm actually going to do is just take a pair of pliers. I'm going to squeeze the end shut and then I'm going to use the propane torch and actually solder the ends closed. That way I don't have any fluid leaking out. Whenever we do this work, we want to make sure that we pull the plastic parts out. Some of them will come off easy, and pull off our O-ring. Make sure you pull off the O-ring so that you can put it back on and you have a good seal. If you leave this on while you're doing the flame, you have a likelihood of actually burning it up. If your plastic parts don't come out, you can actually break them out as well. Just try to get as much of it off as you can. Now you do have two different O-ring sizes. The smaller one is for the longer tube or the on, and the larger one's for the reserve. Now in order to do this, you're just going to grab the piece with your pliers. You're going to pass heat over the end, and as you get this hot, you're going to dab in your solder on the inside. Now we want to make sure that we put our O-ring back on our nipples. Now we're going to want to put them back in the tank. And then with our 17 mil, tighten them back down. Just firm, nothing crazy. Okay, so now we're going to open the 5-gallon bucket. Has an easy pour neck on it. There's a pull tab like a lot of cardboard milk cartons have. So I've got my tank positioned firmly on a 5-gallon bucket, so if anything leaks out, it will be captured within the bucket. I've got my funnel for the fill, and then I have the whole thing level out, and you'll see I've made it as level as I can at the top. That way I can fill it all the way to the brim. Now the nice thing about this stuff is it's non-harmful to most metals. Because this is red and there's usually some type of iron within red paint, I'm going to go ahead and wash this off with a gentle stream of water. And now we let it sit for about 12 hours before emptying the tank. Whenever I clean off parts like this, what I like to do is grab a good carburetor and choke cleaner. This B12 stuff's really nice. And just gently soak everything initially. And this stuff is really harsh on your hands, so if you don't have to pick it up and put it on your hands, then don't. Now just pick up the screws, take a brush, are now ready to reassemble the petcock valve. We grab the body and we grab our tap valve, the rubber insert, and we put it inside the body, making sure that it fully seats correctly. Then we're going to take our valve and grab our new O-ring and wrap it around the outside of it, being sure that it's fully seated all the way around. We're also going to grab a little bit of motor oil and we're just going to rub it on the outside of the O-ring. This is going to allow the valve to turn a little bit smoother within the body. This section right here is where the gasoline flows. So whenever you install this into the body, you want to make sure that it aligns with one of these two holes and with the main part of the body here. Gently push it into the body, being sure not to damage the O-ring as you insert. Now you take the washer, the crush washer, put it on, and we take our metal piece that is where the ball bearing actually hits at, and we're going to get ready to put it on. Now, as you can see, mine doesn't line up perfectly because there's a little tab right here, and you can see that right here there's a half moon. That half moon has to be out of the way of the tab. So we're going to take the body and we're going to rotate it until it actually lines up. A little bit more. Now ready to install our handle. Now on our handle there is a keyway. You can see it here on the valve, and then the receiver here. So whenever we put it together, we're going to line those two up. But before we put it on, we're going to grab the ball bearing and put it in here with the spring. Being sure that your bearing stays in place. You can actually see it down in there. Now we take our bolt, send it through the end, and tighten the bolt until it's fully seated. And our petcock valve is now reassembled. Okay, we've now had it soaking for a while, so we're going to go ahead and flip it upside down so we can get to our plugs. We're going to remove both of our plugs here. And then we simply drain out everything that's in the tank. Let it go a little bit faster, we can open up the top. As before, make sure you wipe off everything that's on the top of the tank. Because my tank is red, I'm going to go ahead and remove the top here and make sure that I get good cleaning underneath here. The evapo-rust can be recycled and reused many times, basically until it all turns black. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this. Now there's quite a bit down here in the bottom, rust and stuff. For that, I'm going to actually get a coffee filter and drain it separate. So here is all the stuff that was left in the bottom of the bucket. now ready to reinstall the petcock valve on our tank. We're now ready to install our fuel filter pickup tubes. First, we're going to do the reserve. Make sure that if you purchase the new tube that you inspect your O-ring. If your O-ring is bad, then I recommend purchasing a new one as well. Slide it over the top and gently work it all the way down to the bottom until it's fully seated all the way around. And it screws into the back. Now we're going to install our reserve tube. On these two, it's a 17 millimeter. Unfortunately, there are no torque specifications. What you're trying to do is tighten them down just enough where you crush the O-ring slightly to where it doesn't cause any leak. So whenever you do it initially, just make sure that you're very careful with it. Don't go crazy. Think of it like a oil filter. Once you're satisfied with it, we're going to be able to put our tubes on and you can check for leaks. Now we're going to install our new tube for the reserve, and that's going to come from here, go around and connect. Make sure that you have them fully seated. Now that you don't have any kinks in your line, you can go ahead and put the clamp on. Now we're going to be installing the bottom hose, which is our on tube. Recommend that on the clamps you turn them to the outside, so if you ever do have to perform work on it, you can easily engage the clamps with the tank still installed on the motorcycle. There's a few different ways to switch out the fuel filter on these bikes. One, you can just pull it off and attempt to do it all right within here. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to pull out the whole assembly, so if you need to change the fuel pump, you can change that while you're in this process. First, we just remove the clamp from the pump itself. Then we remove the line from the pump. Make sure that you have a rag down if you haven't drained all of your gas out, because this will leak some fluid. Now we're going to open up our holder here, disconnect our line for our pump, and set it aside. We have two 10mm bolts. Be careful on this one because you have two things attached to this bolt. First, you have the cable organizer, and then you also have a grounding wire. Now this completely removes the whole assembly, which makes it a lot easier to do the work on the fuel filter. Now to remove the pump from the metal bracket, we simply pull the rubber holder off the fuel filter And if you're doing just the fuel filter, then you can remove this clamp very easily at this point and simply remove the filter and swap it out. If you're going to also be doing the fuel pump, you remove it off of the metal brackets that go through the rubber, gently working it back and forth until it comes all the way out. And you can see that there's some hooks on here. Whenever you put it back on, those hooks should go all the way through the rubber and hook on the outside. We're now ready to swap the filter out. New fuel filter. You'll notice there's arrows on here showing you which way the fuel flows. So that means the previous owner had actually installed a fuel filter the wrong way. That's funny. To reinstall the assembly, we simply reverse the order. Make sure that your line over here is out of the way and you're not squishing it. Make sure that you have your cable organizer and your ground lug underneath this side by the fuel filter. Now we need to install a fuel line. Now we take our connector for the pump, bring it back underneath, along with our connector for the fuel gauge. Both of these should be under here, and squish down the cable organizer. And then we grab our wire from the pump, connect it, and now the fuel filter and pump are ready to go.